Well, we're back in the shop. We're working on our 2001 Sportsman 400. It was supposed to be in just for a simple fix. It needed some bushings in the front. We've already done a video on that. We've put them in our other wheeler already. But when I took it apart, the axle that runs through the lower A-arm was bent. So we took that out and went in the house, ordered a new one, took everything apart, getting ready for the new parts, and let it sit overnight. Come out the next morning and the jack had sunk down. It was sitting on the A-arm, and what had happened was and I didn't even notice at first, but what had happened was the axle shaft pulled out of the universal joint, or the CV joint, sorry, and put a hole in the boot. So back in the house we go and order a boot, and that's where we're at. The axle's now in two pieces and the boot's ruined. So we have to take the whole hub assembly apart. We'll probably have to take the A-arm back off and put a new boot on. So we'll go through all the steps it takes to replace a boot on your 01 Sportsman 400. As you can see, the axle is pulled out of the CV joint. You can see the splines here, and you can see the ripped boot. So we'll take the hub assembly apart first to get that out, and then we'll pull the A-arm off and take it apart. Well, the first thing we're going to do is remove the caliper. Get that out of our way. There's two 1/2-inch bolts holding that on. Just tuck that out of the way. Next, we'll be using a T25 to remove the bolts for the cover for the hub assembly. And a screwdriver, pry that off. Go a little gingerly so you don't damage it. And the catch can underneath for the fluid to come out. And next we'll remove the cotter pin. And I'm going to throw a rag down just so I can lay everything out as it comes apart. Next, we'll take the castle nut off. Oh, this might be a bit of a challenge since the shaft is not connected to the CV joint anymore. Maybe I'll put the impact on that and give it a spin. Well, let's give this a try with a DeWalt impact. Yep, came right off. Okay, so bolt, washer, a little pull and the bearing should pop right out. So again, we're just laying it out the same way it comes apart. And we're going to be careful taking this off where we don't nick any seals. And we're getting a lot more fluid now too. Another bearing. the Hilliard clutch assembly. And one more inner bearing here. All right, that should come right out then. Well, what if the boot wasn't still halfway attached? So we're just going to take a knife and cut this boot the rest of the way off. There we go. So this should come out now. And we got one more bearing in the back even. So we'll take this over to the workbench, get the boot off, get everything all cleaned up. So we've cleaned up along this ring so we can see what we're doing. Pulled some grease off of that. And this looks like the factory ring on here. Usually just give these a squeeze. This one's tight. Almost need an extra hand. Maybe I'll put this in the vise. One more try first. There we go. That's tough. Okay, there's the old ripped boot, and that's the inside of your CV joint. You can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bearings, and it allows it to rotate. Get you in the frame there. And then that spline shaft just goes right in there. There's a snap ring that holds it in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all this old grease out, just clean it up with some paper towels. The new boot came with new grease, so we'll do that, get everything all clean, and then come back and we'll finish taking the boot off the axle side. So we've got it as clean as we're going to get it. So we'll just take our grease that came with the new boot, fill it up, get it worked in the bearings, work it all around. So we'll just take a minute or so to work that all through there. Well, the next thing we're going to do is remove the A-arm bolts. We want to take the A-arm back off again. We're going to have to get the axle in. Use a ratchet wrench. Front one I think I can get the impact on. Makes quick work of that. That will give us all the room we need to get everything back together then. So next we're just going to take this band clamp off and clean this up. It's the same as the other one, just squeezes together. So we got the new boot. We got the shaft all clean. I'm going to put just a little grease on the inside of the boot to slide it on. Just grease that up a little bit. It's a pretty tight fit here. It took a bit to get that started. Alright, that fits pretty good. So we'll take the CV joint. Actually, I'm going to slide that up a little further. Get out of our way a tiny bit. And you can see the snap ring on here, and that's what holds the spline shaft into the CV joint. There we go. I thought I was going to need a block of wood, but that went right on. Okay. A little more. This gets harder as you go because your hands get greasier. There we go. Okay, other than putting the clamps back on, that's all together. And I haven't put the clamps on yet because I don't know which ones I'm going to use. I'm going to grab the originals and see if I can't reuse those, because those always seem to be a little better quality than some of the aftermarket ones you get. But they don't always fit, so we'll see what works best and we'll put those on. So I guess before we go any further, there's a couple of things we need to go over. Normally, to do this job, you would take the axle out completely. You'd remove it from the front differential. Up in the front here, on the other side of the universal joint, there's a roll pin that you have to knock out in order to get it out. They can be a bit of a bear to get out. You need a long, thin punch, and it can just be a little tough because it's a weird angle to get in there at. So we're going to try not to have to do that. Other thing, getting this CV joint off the axle. You saw the little snap ring that was in there. It's not much holding it. Really, all you have to do is give it a pull and it should come right apart. Sometimes you have to give it a little more of a pull than that, but they do come apart like that. And then you just line up the splines to put it back together. And usually it goes back together a little tougher, so you know, a couple taps with the rubber hammer and it's in. So that's together. So I'm not exactly sure how we're going to be able to get this through the knuckle here. There's not enough room. I'm going to try to avoid, like I said, I'm going to try to avoid having to take that roll pin out. Maybe we'll just, you know, disassemble the strut, the whole off the bike totally, slide it back together that way. That probably is easier than trying to knock that roll pin out. Anyways, that's what we're going to try to do. We'll see how we make out. Our next step, though, is to put the clamps back on the boot. We're going to pull the tie rod off. See if that gives us enough room to get this steering knuckle out far enough to get it back together. I doubt it, but we're going to give it a try. 'Cause Doesn't look like it. See if we can wiggle it around a little, make it work. I think we're going to be able to do this. We've got the bearing on already. That's not good. You just give this a really good pull. Yep, there it goes. All right. Now we'll just have to put the bearings and everything back in the same way they came out. I'm just going to look it up in the book real quick to make sure I do this right, and I'll be right back. All right, so next, another bearing sits in there. Then the clutch assembly, and make sure when you put this together that you have these little tabs where they're supposed to go. If you don't, you'll ruin it. And make sure that stays on there and doesn't, doesn't come loose on you. And another bearing. Slide that over, and the last bearing. Washer, castle nut. There is a way to torque this to set those bearings. We'll get the torque specs out, and we'll do that next. Snug it up a tiny bit. So the crescent wrench. Alright, I have to look that up. So this works a little different than most things you torque. You go to the highest torque setting first, 165 inch-pounds, and then you back it off and tighten it to 124 inch-pounds. So you're setting the bearings and then basically loosening it off a little before they can spin. So we have the torque wrench set. You're supposed to spin this as you go. There we are, we're at 165. And we will back it off. And then retighten to 124, and that's it. Put the plug on, put the cotter pin through, and it says to tighten it to get the cotter pin through if needed, not loosen it. So we just got to barely move it. Just a hair more. There we are. Perfect. Yeah, so we're in good shape. A little tighter than you'd expect, but that's what it calls for. Get the cotter pin back in. And bend tight. I'll wipe that this off first. O-ring looks decent. Those are the T25s again. We'll just snug them down. Okay, just got to remember to fill that up. I guess next we will put the A-arm back in. Alright, we're finally making some good progress. Now we're ready to put the A-arm bolts in. Line that up. Always a little hard to get these started. Come on. I think I got it. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get the other end started before we get too far. Well, getting that lined up was a bit of a chore, but it's in and tight. Wish we could get that little impact on the back one, but not enough room for that. Well, that's good. Next we'll put the tie rod back on. Well, we've got the A-arm all tightened down, so next we will install the brakes again, put the caliper back on. Now the first thing I'm going to do here is just stick a screwdriver between the brake pads just to push the piston back a little bit, make it easier to get it on. Yeah, it doesn't take much. Find our bolts. Get that one started. That should work for that. Next we'll put the tie rod back together. The washer first. You're not even really in frame there. There we go. That's good and tight. We do have a cotter pin for that too. Not that that's necessary. It is a nylock nut, but it was in there, so I'll just even throw the used one back in. A little extra security. Doesn't hurt. All right, we're about done with this. We got to put some the drive fluid in and put the wheel back on, and that's about it. So here's what we use for the front hub. It's Polaris drive demand fluid. I've just put some in an old water bottle with a squirt top on it. Makes it a little easier. A 3/16 Allen takes the plug out. Now the book says it takes about 2.5 ounces for the correct amount in here. But it says to fill it up to the 4 or the 8 o'clock position. This also has a magnet on it, so you always want to wipe that off every time you pull it out. So about 2.5 ounces. And you want it full enough that it comes out about the 8 o'clock or the 4 o'clock position. So let's see. Yep, we've got enough. Comes out right around the 6, or sorry, right around the the 3 or the 9, about half full. We're gonna let that sit just for a minute to get to the back bearings and work its way through, just to make sure we're not a little low. We'll try that again. Yep, it's a tiny bit over full, but you know what? That's good enough. I'm gonna leave it at that. Just good and snug, not too tight. Okay, all we have left is just to put the wheel on. Alright, all that's left to do now is get it off the jack stand, lower it down, take it for a spin, make sure everything works. We've done the bushings on the other side as well now. Got everything back together and it's working as it should. I guess this video just shows that you can replace that CV boot without taking the axle all the way out. Just in case you can't get that roll pin out or something. Anyways, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and thanks for watching.